Now, from Atlanta News First, the issues that matter to you. This is On the Record.
No closer to compromise on Capitol Hill. Finger pointing between parties continues as the federal government shutdown now enters another week. I'm Doug Reardon.
And I'm Rick Volbaum. And this shutdown is over Affordable Care Act subsidies that have helped Americans afford health insurance plans that are set to expire at the end of the year. Democrats want those tax credits extended. Republicans say they're open to talking about it, but not until Democrats agree to reopen the government. Meantime, thousands of federal workers are furloughed or are being forced to work without pay after Democrats blocked a vote last week to pay the people still clocking in.
And according to the Department of Veteran Affairs, the shutdown is now having major impact on veteran services. 16,000 service members that are in the process of leaving the military are unable to receive VA benefits that help with the transition back to civilian life. 900,000 VA education beneficiaries are unable to get their assistance, and more than 100,000 veterans can't get counseling or case management services.
And more than 1 million families in Georgia could soon lose the food assistance that they need to put food on the table. Close to 1.4 million Georgians rely on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, and those benefits could end November 1st. It's leaving parents worried about their kids going hungry and what desperate families in need might do without help.
A lot of people may go and start breaking in stuff, breaking in stores, stealing food. It's hard. And I'm not saying that I'm going to do that, but other families, you don't know what it's like.
And even still, Democrats believe this is a fight worth having. I sat down with Charlie Bailey, the chair of Georgia's Democratic Party, to talk about the shutdown on the record. The shutdown has been something that I think has really frustrated people on both sides of the aisle. People will ask, why don't Democrats just sign this CR, get the government back open, and then have these conversations about health care?
It is a simple act of saying we're not going to double, at the very least, double the health care premiums of 1.4 million Georgians. That's all Democrats are saying. Nobody knows what a CR is. Well, that's Washington speak. What the people here in Georgia are saying is, hey, I didn't do anything to deserve my health insurance premiums doubling or quadrupling. So, hey, politicians in D.C., Republicans in D.C., why don't you get off your butts and do something about it?
And of course, on top of all this, Senator Ossoff is right in the middle of rerunning for his seat. Is that a seat that you're looking at and a little concerned about, or are you feeling pretty good about it right now?
Well, again, I'll come back. We're a battleground. So Senator Ossoff knows, and we know that this is a seat that we're going to have to fight for. We would be fools to say, oh, we got this. There's nothing to do. No, it requires hard work. That's what a battleground is. But we're going to make sure our voters are motivated.
We have a big 365 days coming up. How do you feel about the Democratic Party right now?
I feel good. Republicans have been in charge of this state for 22 years. The American dream is less attainable now than it was 22 years ago when they took power. Our job is to make sure they know who to blame and make sure they know that they don't have to put up with that.
Things have certainly over the last couple decades become more expensive, and it's been harder for people to live. And as you mentioned, Republicans have been in control of the state for nearly a generation now. And so if things have been hard this whole time, why haven't people figured this out yet? Why are people still voting for Republicans and not Democrats at the state level?
It is what a battleground is. You know, it's literally the definition. It can be won and it can be lost. So it's on us, you know, me as chair of the Democratic Party of Georgia and the Democratic Party writ large, to make that argument about the consequences of Republican rule.
There's been a lot of conversations in the last couple of years about migrations from the traditional party of Democrats to, what now looks to be like some defections from black voters, Hispanic voters, young voters.
Donald Trump and Republicans' brand is dropping. And where is it dropping the fastest and the furthest? Some of those groups you just mentioned. Black voters, Hispanic voters, younger voters. There was a little uptick in that 2024, but that's already fallen off because people are saying, hey, I was born during the day, but I wasn't born yesterday, right? I mean, they understand that they've been betrayed, and that's why it's already swung back against the Republicans.
We also have a gubernatorial race that you and I are both keeping close eyes on. Would you be comfortable with any of the current Democratic candidates coming out of the primary and being that nominee?
We're going to have a strong nominee that understands that this is a fight for working people in this state that they badly need. And whoever our nominee is going to have a really good shot at winning that race, because they're going to make that argument about what the 22 years of Republican rule has wrought here.
And you can listen to my full interview with Georgia Democratic Party Chair Charlie Bailey right now. Just subscribe to the On the Record podcast from Atlanta News First.
Let's welcome our panel. Former Democratic State Representative Terry Anulewicz is here. Also Republican political analyst and president of Main Street Network Strategies, Julianne Thompson. Thank you both for joining us on the record. Good to talk to both of you. Okay, so we just heard from Charlie Bailey. He said this is a fight worth having. But we've also run through all of the problems that families are facing, that veterans are facing. And I just wonder, Terry, at what point does this become a problem for Democrats?
I have seen national pundits, I've seen high level, Speaker Johnson, I've seen the president talking about why the shutdown is a Democratic thing. It's not. The Democrats aren't in charge. And I think when you are looking at workaday Americans, you're looking at the veterans, you're looking at the federal employees, you're looking at all the folks who are really, really about to face a financial crisis, sitting around their kitchen table in their households. They're not thinking about continuing resolutions. They're not thinking about words like reinsurance. All they know is that they might not be having a paycheck. They're looking at what their health insurance premiums are going to be, especially if they're in the marketplace, and they're looking at who's in charge. I think the longer this goes on, the longer this really does continue to be a very big problem for the Republicans, and not just a public relations problem, but you're going to have folks who are having to make serious decisions about whether they go to the grocery store or whether they pay rent.
Yeah, and Julianne, we just talked about all the impacts to veteran services, to SNAP benefits, and things of that nature. Something's got to give at some point. What do you think it will be? What issue, if you have one in mind, do you think will finally get people in Washington over the hurdle?
Well, I do agree that the vast majority of Americans want to see the government shut down stop. They want to see the government reopen. The vast majority of Americans on both sides of the aisle. That being said, we have to remember that whether it's the far left on the Democratic Party or the far right on the Republican Party, our bases are by and large in control of what is going on Capitol Hill right now. And both bases are in the mood for a fight. And so I think that is what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. We have midterms coming up next year, and neither party wants to alienate the base. But I think all you have to do is look to people like Senator John Fetterman, who said earlier this week,
Democrat from Pennsylvania.
The Democrat from Pennsylvania, he said earlier this week that any deal that could be made is not worth the suffering that people are going through right now. And that is why he is going to vote with the Republicans.
Yeah, and we just heard from Charlie Bailey. He is very optimistic about the Democratic Party, and we talked very, very in depth about how there has not been that widespread success either statewide, certainly not nationally in the last election cycle, really since 2020. And so something has to change. What do you think about the Democratic Party now going into these midterms, going into a gubernatorial race? Has enough changed that they can now win statewide?
I think Charlie Bailey is the best person right now to set the state Democratic Party on a very focused and clear pathway towards victory. I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities. Julianne mentioned the base, and the base is critical in those midterms because the way our districts are drawn in Georgia, there are very few actual toss-up seats. There are very few swing seats. Most seats are going to be drawn to be majority Democratic, to be majority Republican. Those races are going to be decided by the base, by those hardcore voters who actually do vote in primaries. So you have to really find then that balance, right? You have to make sure you're not alienating your base because you want them to vote for you in these primaries because they will vote for you in the general. But you also want to make sure that you're not alienating those other active voters, those Democrats who care very deeply about what is happening both in their communities and about what is happening in Washington and how that is impacting their communities. I think that having Charlie Bailey there, having the Democratic Party focus, having the message that, look, Are you better off now than you were when President Trump was elected? Are you better off now than you were when Republicans, have full control of the House and the Senate? And if you're not, the Democrats are going to be the people who you need to look to, because we have a plan, we have a path forward, and we're going to get us out of this mess.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the primaries, because, Julianne, this week we got a chance to get some FaceTime with Governor Brian Kemp, and we asked him, there's a lot of people in this GOP gubernatorial primary that he's worked closely with, Secretary Raffensperger, AG Chris Carr, his Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, and we asked him, are you going to make an endorsement in the primary? And this is what he told us.
All of those folks are focused on public safety and keeping our citizens safe and making sure that we have great logistics in our state, great healthcare options. And, what I'm looking for in the future is somebody that will take that mantle. We've had over 20 years of great Republican leadership in the governor's office in Georgia, and I'm looking for someone that will do that in the future, and I think we'll end up seeing that.
So who's he going to endorse? A Republican. Fair enough, I guess. But not really non-committal on that primary race. Do you think that there is someone in the back of his mind who he would like to see take his job?
Well, that remains to be seen. But I think right now he's really focused his energy on the Senate race and Derek Dooley, who he has come out and endorsed.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why I thought maybe he might go one way or the other, because he made a call in that Senate race.
I think we'll have to wait and see. But I think that Governor Kemp realizes, like we just talked about a moment ago, what people care about are the issues at their kitchen table. What they care about is the economy. They care about jobs. They care about public safety, education, and they care about fiscal stability. And Georgia, under Governor Kemp's leadership and under Republican leadership, has made the top 10 in just about every one of those issues. And you cannot argue with success when you are consistently named the best place in the nation to live, work, and raise a family.
So I'd like to add the biggest difference between Derek Dooley and AG Carr, Lieutenant Governor Jones, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, is that the governor won't have to work hand in glove with Derek Dooley during the upcoming 2025 legislative session the way he will have to with those leading Republican candidates. Right. And Governor Kemp's not running again, but there's one more legislative session that he's going to do, and he's going to get through, and he's going to be in the executive seat and in the office right there on the second floor of the Capitol. And it's not normal, or it's not common for governors to necessarily endorse someone who might be their successor. And I think part of it is because it's very close, literally very close to home. But I really think the main reason is he's got to work with all three of these people during the 2026 legislative session.
Still a long way to go until that election.
We've got more than a year. So.
Very interesting.
Well, thank you both. We appreciate your insight on that. Still ahead on the record, a battle at the state capitol over pouring more resources into data centers in Georgia. What's at stake as communities fear power bills could go up?
Welcome back. This week, early voting begins in a special election. Voters in parts of Fulton and Cobb counties are heading to the polls to decide who they want to represent them in the state Senate. It's for the District 35 seat left vacant by Jason Estevez. Last month, he resigned from the state legislature to focus on his run for governor. Early voting opens Monday for that race. It runs through November 14th. November 18th is Election Day. You can log on to AtlantaNewsFirst.com to find out where you can cast your ballot in that race.
And this week is also your last chance to vote early ahead of the November 4th election, including the closely watched Public Service Commission races. 2 seats on the 5-member board are up for grabs. Last week, the board made headlines not for the election, but because former Democratic PSC candidate, she was arrested and charged with a felony theft of trade secrets count. Police say in this video, Patty Duran picks up a labeled booklet of Georgia Power trade secrets, flips through it, and then appears to put it in her bag and leave the building. We don't know what's inside that booklet exactly, but we do know it is confidential and proprietary information.
And that arrest happened after an important commission hearing. The panel is considering Georgia Power's request to add 10 gigawatts of power to its electrical grid. According to the Public Service Commission, most of that will be for data centers, largely focused on artificial intelligence. Many people are opposed to that. They voiced their opposition. Environmental concerns is something that they state, urging the state to prioritize community interests.
We want to be the state that is known as the new technology hub. But we can't do that at the cost of our health, both financial, physical, and environmental.
The Public Service Commission is expected to vote on that matter in December.
And some advocates are pushing to move the vote until next year. That if new commissioners are elected to the panel, they will also have a say in these potential rate increases. And still ahead, dozens indicted and accused of rigging million-dollar sports betting schemes, just as Georgia lawmakers are now considering gambling in our state.
But my message to the defendants who've been rounded up today is this: your winning streak has ended. Your luck has run out. Violating the law is a losing proposition, and you can bet on that.
Dozens arrested in connection with a years-long illegal gambling operation and investigation, including several current and former NBA players and a head coach. Charges include money laundering, wire fraud, even armed robbery. The allegations involve the use of insider NBA information, along with underground poker games backed by mafia families. This comes against the backdrop of continuing efforts here in Georgia to legalize sports betting, which lawmakers have failed to pass in 2024 and 2025. Voters could potentially be asked to vote on it as part of a ballot referendum as early as next year. We're back with our panel. And Julianne, Georgia is one of 11 states that does not allow legal sports betting, although a lot of people do it illegally. But does something like this, a scandal like this, does it scare lawmakers away, do you think? Does this perhaps put a nail in the coffin of the idea of having legalized betting
I
here?
do think it will scare them away. I think that there's no doubt about that. I mean, you have organizations like Frontline Policy and Faith and Freedom that have stood firmly against bringing sports betting to Georgia for years now, and I think that is what has kept it from moving forward. I mean, we're hearing words like La Cosa Nostra, or the mafia, and I think most importantly, the rigging of the games, I think is all pointing to the concerns that people have had in the past. And it has failed, until last year, when you started to hear more really about it and you thought it was getting, off the ground. It's really failed to gain momentum among the public. And I do think that this is going to be a nail in the coffin for it. I don't think that it's going to pass, at least not anytime soon.
Yeah, well, it hasn't anytime recently, and there have been many, many attempts. Even when you were in the legislature, there were many attempts to try and get legalized sports betting going. There was an attempt last year by some of your former legislative colleagues on both sides of the aisle to get it going. So there is some bipartisan support for this. And so is there a way, when we see these massive scandals that, as I think you rightly said, scare lawmakers away from doing this, is there any way to prevent it from the legislature's standpoint?
I think that seeing what has happened with these indictments and with these arrests and with the La Cosa Nostra, like seriously, in the year of our Lord 2025, this is wild. Like we live in jewel heists that was like wild. What a time to be alive. So we have all these things going on. And I'm thinking, especially my perspective as a former lawmaker, and to be clear, I was always extremely supportive of sports betting. And not only because I represented a district that included both the Atlanta Braves and the Atlanta United Training Facility. And I don't bet, I don't gamble. It's not my cup of tea. It's not a way that not anything I find particularly entertaining, and I'm really cheap. But a lot of people are very interested in this. A lot of people do support this. There's grassroots support for this. And I think that seeing what can go wrong, I think is actually motivation for lawmakers here in Georgia. I think that it makes it clear that right now we have something that is not regulated in Georgia, not to mention the fact that we are not generating any revenue off of this the way we are off of the lottery, the way we are off of coin-operated amusements. But right now with sports betting, it's happening. The VPNs are happening. People are getting addicted to this. People are, they're doing the proposition bets. They're betting on anything from Braves games to ping pong, table tennis. These bets are happening, and they're happening here on the ground in Georgia. And right now, it is the Wild West. We have no oversight. It's all right. How can we make this even more safe and secure in Georgia? How can we make this a way where we have control? making sure these guardrails are there, and they're going to be even clearer and stronger than they could have been before.
Yeah, guardrails is the word we hear a lot around the Capitol.
Oh,
when we talk
absolutely,
about
because
this.
it's happening. It is happening.
Well, all week long, Atlanta News First digs into the latest developments from our elected leaders here in the state capitol and in Washington. You can subscribe to the On the Record podcast to get political updates right in the palm of your hand.
All right, and that is our show. Thank you to our panel, Terry Ann Olowitz and Julianne Thompson, and thank you as always for watching. We'll see you next Sunday.